Hello there and welcome to this Roll Some Dice video. So today guys, just going to discuss playing games of black powder, specifically 28mm Napoleonics on a 6x4 gaming table, so 6 foot by a 4 foot table, which is pretty much the standard gaming table these days. I know they'll come in various sizes, but a lot of games are played on a 6x4 table. Firstly, I love black powder. It's a great gaming system. The rules still hold up. I've got a second edition book here, which has been around for a few years now, but rules still hold up. It allows you to play a nice fast-paced game. But Napoleonics is all about the spectacle, really. Obviously, the gaming is important, but having mass ranks of troops, like the colours, the regiments, the flags, all that kind of historic nature of this, it's fantastic, really. It really is a great spectacle to see when you've got fully painted armies on a great gaming table with some nice scenery. But there are some limitations. When you look at a lot of the some of the battle reports I've seen, even the pictures in here of some of the games, there are much larger tables. I think the Perry twins have got a table that's 12 by 8 foot or something like that, and you see gaming tables of 8 by 6 and 10 by 6, etc. And although that's fantastic, for the most people, and this is my home studio setup, I think I can stretch to a kind of a 7 by 4 really. But most people play on a 6 by 4. A lot of clubs do. I mean, my local gaming club, all the tables are 6 by 4 as standard. We have hosted a few more joint games where we've put a few tables together, which is okay for kind of a one-off really, but it's difficult to do all the time. And also you're taking away gaming tables from other players who want to do different things. So I started to scale down my the models that I used, and I still think it works really well, because one of the things that I think about is with wargaming, it's great to have the models and paint and have them looking great, but also you want to be able to play the game and have some maneuverability, as a commander, you want to have some tactical flexibility for your troops, as well as all the spectacle sort of stuff, really. So, yeah. By the way, I also play Black Powder American Civil War, which is the epic scale that Warlord Games do. And there's loads of videos on the channel if you want to check those out. And again, I've scaled, even for those, I play on a 6 by 4. And even for those, I've scaled down the unit sizes that are suggested in the epic gaming rules, just to get the most models I can on the table, really. I think I'll go through what I've got here, and I'll show. I've also got some British and Allies. This is the French, but I'll just show you what I do in my standard units and how that works. I've also got a battle report that I've just finished for using these exact armies. So I'll post a link in the description of this particular video if you want to go and watch that, and you'll see what I mean about this in practice, really. Last thing I'll say, this is just what I want. This is just what I do. I'm not saying if you want to put full-size regiments onto a 6 by 4 table, you're absolutely welcome to do that. I've done it. It works. I just found it was a bit too limiting around movement in particular, and also the fact you have some units that just don't do anything for the whole game because they're kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck behind one of their brother or sister units. It's very hard to get them into the game, so they're kind of just there really doing nothing. And you've spent all that time painting them. You want at least some to get into the action as well. So I found this way you kind of get more interaction with the troops that you've got as well. So you get more interaction. It does have its limitations. It's not as impressive in some respects, maybe, but I certainly think it does work for me. And if it works for you, hopefully it can inspire you to do something similar. Right, so I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to go through how I've organised some of the units, and then we can go from there. Right, guys, so here's my French division, which is effectively what I've got on the table here. And as I say, there is a battle report with this. With all these units on, which is in the link in the description. But as you can see, I'm almost at the edge of my 6 by 4 table there, and already this is looking pretty full. So I'll just quickly run through how it's set up and the types of units and the differences, basically, which isn't particularly difficult. But firstly, I just wanted to say I do use Albion Triumphant, which is the Volume 2 100 Days campaign for a lot of my games. So this division is about 750 points. Ideally, I want to get to about 1,000 points for a game to get a bit more on the table, and I'm probably going to add, which I've already got really, some voltigeurs, some skirmishers, and maybe another brigade as well. But as you can see, I'm already getting, when you stretch it out like this, I'm already filling that 6x4, or the 6-foot part of the table quite well already. So yeah, the other thing to mention, although black powder it's not really prescriptive about table sizes. It just says an appropriate size table, although I say it does go on to reference, I think, an 8x4 and 10 by whatever in there. You may be aware of Hail Caesar, which is another gaming system that Warlord Games produce, which is in that kind of, I call it in the black powder series. You've got this, you've got pike and shot, black powder. They're all very, very similar. They've got very similar sort of game mechanics, basically. But one of the things, this is the newer editions. This is the 3rd edition Hail, or is it 3rd edition? I think it's 3rd edition Hail Caesar. But this is 2nd edition black powder, which, as I say, has been around for a while. But when I was reading through this, one thing struck me on this page here. I've got a little pencil just to show me where it was. But on this page here, because again, you've got sort of suggested unit sizes for basing. But on here, it talks about, they call it a one-on-one game. I think they're basically saying that these games are supposed to be played potentially with multiplayers, larger tables. It does give you some reduced unit frontages for playing one-to-one, and it sort of suggests that it's actually probably easier to play on smaller tables as well. So I think they're obviously recognising that actually the effort it takes to actually get all this on the table in the first place is huge. I mean, I like to play with painted armies. I don't like grey plastic. So to get all this painted can take months of work. And, you know, if you double this up, which I'll come on to in a minute, to the number of models, it can be a lot of effort and work before you can get a proper game on the table. And I think sometimes these wargaming systems can be a little bit off-putting, to put it that way, in terms of trying to paint all these sort of things. If you're not really into the painting side of things, it can be a real daunting task to get yourself through all this. So it's nice to see that actually in this Hail Caesar, they're referencing smaller sized units. And I took a bit of inspiration from that, although it wasn't purely based on what I'd read in Hail Caesar. But I thought it's a similar principle to that. So what are the main things to talk about? So if I start with the infantry, now the French, of course, so I've got my commander stands. These are all very what I would use on a, by the way, I have got all the extra stands you need to play at the proper level. So for example, they suggest 6 stands for a regiment. So if I was to take this regiment here, basically I just halve them. So basically that is a unit in a regiment in line. Now it suggests in the book you're going for something like this with, it's obviously not quite accurate in terms of the units, but that size as a kind of a standard size unit. And as you can already see, you know, if you've got the same number of units I've got here, they take up a lot more space. Now, the French like to be in assault columns, which is a little bit different, or attack column. But certainly for the British and the Allies, and line was a very popular, you know, form of fighting for a lot of the forces in this era. So you can see how much room you need to take up with a standard size regiment. So as I say, what I do, I literally just halve it down to 3 stands, and just have the flags in the middle. And to me, it's all about having the flags. As long as you've got the flags in there, that still looks okay to me. And again, if you look at in the case of this battalion, I've got 3 regiments in that battalion there, and a brigade commander. Sorry, a brigade. Sorry. So there's 3 battalions or regiments in that brigade. Brigade commander and artillery. And as you can see, I still think that looks pretty impressive. I still think that looks representative of the game, what it's supposed to be. But it takes up half the space, basically. Now, as I say, the French like to be in attack or assault columns. So I've got the grenadiers here. And again, normally you would have 6 stands for this. And what I've just done is just taken 2 off, basically. So standard regiment, I've done 4 stands. And I still think that's fairly representative of an assault column. And again, if you want to go into line, you just bring one of these out and just put one of these to the side whilst you're playing. If you want to play larger units, you could even keep the 4 and just put that one in the back or something like that to represent it being maybe a large unit. Because again, there are some limitations to this. It's not quite in the spirit of some of the things it suggests in the rulebook about having large units. You might have another couple of stands on top of that. But that's how I do it, basically. And that means you can just, again, you've got a bit of game management if you have to take models off the table. But most of the time I'm playing the French, I'm in assault column, attack column. and that works pretty well like that. Good example over here of a brigade in a mixed order. So this battalion here, you've got 2 regiments in line, 2 in assault column, plus your brigade commander and your artillery support. And again, I just have 1 cannon for artillery, even though it's a full battery. So even that mixed order battalion, brigade, I keep saying battalion, brigade, you see how much space that just takes up, even with half the stands. You can imagine if you had another 3 stands here, another 2 there, taking up a lot more space around the table. In terms of cavalry, I tend to use just this. Now, these are actually as wide as you would normally have, but normally your cavalry regiment would be 6 stands like that, roughly. You'd probably have it like that. But again, this is actually 2 regiments. As you can see by the flags in the middle, I've got 2 regiments there. So again, it means you can just cut down on the painting, it's a lot less to paint, but also even because the frontage, actually, this is quite legal. That's probably the right frontage for a cavalry regiment. But again, I've got 2 cavalry brigades there on the table with some horse artillery as well, as opposed to having double the thickness. We're just taking up space on the table. So it's as simple as that, guys, really. There we go. That is a divisional size force for the French facing off against the British and Allies. And like I say, I'm going to add a bit to this. So I'm going to get this up to 1,000 points. I'm pretty much there anyway. It's probably going to be some more skirmishers, as I say, and probably 1 more brigade to get me up to the 1,000 points. But beyond that, I think I'm going to be struggling again to get any manoeuvrability on the table and get things working as I like, basically. So that's my take on playing Napoleonics. Now, I can imagine that there might be some comments about saying, well, what about there's various different formations you can form. You've got, if you look at the British, there was like column of companies and all this sort of stuff. March column. Well, march column is quite straightforward. It's just, again, you can either use 3 or 4 stands. I'll just use 3. There's your march column. Doesn't really matter, does it? So you march, you've got your assault column, you've got your line. So it is a bit limited. You can't form all of the various formations that you might be able to do with more stands. But I found for the games I play, I'm not really doing much outside of line, assault column, some march column maybe as well. Anyway, so I think that works pretty well. And again, I was talking earlier about units not being involved in the game. If you look at that there, I could get all 3 of these regiments involved in the game. If this unit here was another 3 stands wide, it may restrict my manoeuvrability, but I could still think I could get all 3 of those units engaged into some part of the game with that unit at the back supporting it. And you do want some units supporting. Supporting is a good part of the game, but you don't want units just not really interacting with the game, particularly when you've spent all that time painting them. You want them to do something as part of your gaming experience. So there you go, guys. That's my take on it. The last thing I want to cover off, and I'll just get the book out, is I've actually also reduced some of the ranges. So I'll just go over that and just finish off with that. Right, so here's my handy little reference sheet that I put together for my games of Black Powder. I've played obviously a lot of games, so I've kind of settled on these ranges in the end, and effectively it is not for everything, but for most things I've just gone with 2/3. That's for both the 28mm scale and for the epic scale. And the reason I've gone for 2/3, I've tried it at the full ranges. So for example, movement is 12 inches. But on a 6x4 table, if you've got an infantry that move 12, it moves 8 on here, 12 inches, 3 moves is 36 inches, which is pretty much the whole table. At least then if you get 3 moves off on here, the maximum you're going to get is halfway across the table. I also found for the ranges on guns, again, it works pretty well. So smoothbore muskets are down to 12 inches rather than 18. So again, you've got it's a 48-inch range across the table. So at least that gives you a couple of, you're not in range to shoot basically on turn 1. Usually, sometimes you are. But I found with the full size ranges, you are always in range, to be honest. So this, I think, just helps to manage the game. I've kept a few things the same. So for example, I've kept close short range at 6 inches. 2/3 is 4 inches, but it's so close it looks a bit weird. So I just kept that at 6 inches. But even all your orders, your proximity, and things like that are all to the 8-inch, which is really your standard infantry movement. So in the main book, that's 12, and that's 12. So found that's good. And also for your commanders, on this size table, if you've got a 12-inch command range, I mean, literally, you don't have to move your commander. You can just sit there for the whole game. 12 inches is over here and over here. So they can really order their troops wherever they are. So again, if you just, you want your commanders to be doing something, you want to give a bit of jeopardy in terms of them potentially being too far from their units. So you get those command modifiers for being distant from your units. You want that jeopardy that's in the game to be there. So again, it just helps to reduce those command ranges, reduce those support ranges, so that you've got to really think about where you're positioning your troops. Because if you just use the standard ranges on a 6x4, you're pretty much always in range of everything, which is kind of a bit boring, really, to be honest. So that's my little handy cheat sheet. It literally is just 2/3. Some of the things in here are for American Civil War as well. But I found that seems to be a good harmony, a kind of happy balance, I would say, between the full ranges. But I did try half ranges, but I just found half ranges just didn't really work. Again, just too restrictive. And your shooting was so short range, really, in terms of, I think, and you wouldn't be like 9 inches for a musket, which isn't really, you've got to almost be right in the grill of the opponent to get it. So that's the last thing I was just going to mention to you. Right, so hopefully you found that interesting. Like I say, I'm not by any way denigrating people who want to have the full-size regiments, playing on bigger tables. You could, even playing on a 6x4, having all your regiments out, happy days. I'm not saying you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. I've done it. I'm just saying this is how I do it now. I've just found this is a lot easier for me, just in terms of game management, in terms of painting, but also I found, and hopefully if you do watch the battle report, you see what I mean. You do get some flexibility for movement. It does allow you to maneuver your troops around a bit more. It's still not, you still are a little bit restricted, and battles in those periods weren't particularly fire maneuver. It was mass ranks just marching towards each other. But you want to have some opportunity to be able to flank or do other things, and just wherever you position your unit, that's it for the game. And also, as I say, that you want your units to be interacting with the game as well. Right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. If you like this video, guys, please hit the like button. It's always helped the channel. If you want to make any comments, I'm always happy to respond. I try and respond to every comment that's made. But the main thing is keep yourselves safe, and I'll actually catch you very soon.